So where are we at this point in the conference? Some of you have been here since Monday. Some came in and joined us yesterday. Some are just here today. So where are we in the process of understanding semantics and taxonomies and the general process of getting what you publish out to Dr. Kotula and his colleagues in a way that is palatable, meaningful, saves him time as opposed to costing him time. We've heard, I'll just go through the program as kind of do the same. Margie gave us a summary of the updates to the software yesterday morning. Then we got into some wonderful case studies. What is happening at JSTOR? What are they doing with taxonomies? How are they implementing it? We heard from Charlotte McNaughton at ASCE. What's happening there with taxonomies? How are they using them? How are they leveraging them? And one of the interesting things that comes up in these conversations is, how long does it take? Some folks, some organizations have been at this for quite a while, getting these things out, and in some cases they're not out into the public yet. What's going on? Why is it taking so long? We heard from Audrey at NIOSH about what they're doing with taxonomies and mine safety data, a very, very important and critical area. Then Helen Atkins at PLOS talked about using semantics to help manage the inflow of manuscripts. How do you handle that? You're getting inundated. The researchers get inundated. You go out there and try to do a search of the literature to find something, and there's like a lot of it. But the people in the publishing pipeline also get inundated. She was saying, the volume they get of submissions for PLOS 1 is overwhelming. How do you use semantics and other metrics to, push data to the right reviewers to properly handle? I mean, do we have things, or do they come from certain geographic areas, meaning that they might require a little special attention because they don't necessarily understand the format for the journal that they've submitted to, and there might be issues there. The science might be excellent, the reporting might be excellent, but it doesn't conform to their style guide. So maybe, you do, that problem can be easily solved with the authors. You get back to them more quickly that way. Jonas from PLOS talked about how they're using the MAI and the thesaurus for matching up of resources, people, particularly people and subjects and activities and what various people are doing. And then Kevin Ford from Marklogic talked about how to use semantics in a NoSQL database and how you can use the meaning to help people discover things they might not be thinking about. By the use, for example, of related concepts. So you go in with a specific concept, like Paul did, doing a straightforward search in biology to come up with something useful. But in use of related terms, you can see, well, here's a concept that I didn't know about because I'm not a biologist, and maybe I should also be looking there. And of course, science is a whole lot more interdisciplinary than it used to be. And so you need to be aware of things that are out there. Paul spoke this morning, I'm speaking. We have some more case studies this afternoon about the use of semantics, a joint presentation by Rebecca and Matt from AIP and Publishing Technologies about how to merge this stuff. Jacob from Adapon will talk about some tools they have to mix it. And then Margie and Bob and John will talk about other uses. So I just wanted to kind of review that to get started and to see if you really have, at this point, any questions about what we're trying to accomplish here this week, what you're trying to accomplish. So feel free to ask. You've heard, it's often a question is prefaced by, well, this may be a stupid question, but so on. And you've heard that, or maybe this is a naive question. And we had discussions last night at the reception about the comedian we had here last year, who had, it wasn't his routine last year, but I'd heard him before where he has a joke about stupid questions. And his point is, yes, there are stupid questions. And out of context, like who's buried in Grant's tomb? We remember that from grade school, right? Well, is that a stupid question? Well, now we're into DNA, so maybe somebody takes a DNA sample and, well, that's not Grant, so who's buried in Grant's tomb? So a question out of context might sound stupid. In an entire paragraph, hey, that's a very important question. So do feel free to ask questions. I think it's probably more dangerous not to ask questions than to ask them, even though they may be. So partly what I'm going to do is kind of summarize in a list format that you have this presentation in your thumb drive. So I'm going to give you kind of a list of a lot of the things that have been talked about already and will be talked about through the rest of the day. So that you can go back and say, okay, well, we're doing this and this, but here's some of the other things we can do as kind of a reminder. So the question is, you have a taxonomy. Now what do you do with it? It can be a fairly insignificant investment, but it can be a very, very large investment, depending on what you need to accomplish. But nevertheless, it's an investment to build one of these things to a point where it's really going to do some good for the content that you're dealing with. So how do you leverage that? What can you do with your taxonomy? What you plan to do with your taxonomy? I mean, here's some ideas. You can print it, and you can put your monitor on top of it. Some of them are fairly, you can get it up there so your monitor is at eye level. I mean, that's one thing you can do with it. I've seen them, doorstop, prop open the door over there. In fact, we had to do that. Couldn't find our doorstop when they were loading up the kitchen for breakfast. And then you could send it to your dad. Look, I built a taxonomy, and here's my student loan. Could you make payments for me? Because how do you get a job as a taxonomist? You call Access Innovations, or you call or another thing, you could archive it and send a copy. You don't just want to send a copy to your boss. Look, we actually did something. Send it off to Jamin. Send it to him. Print it out and send it to him in the mail. Let him put it on his desk for the boss to see. You can post it on Facebook. I'm sure that would make a good impression with your friends. Or you could write a score for it, put it into a musical. So make a documentary on YouTube. So much kidding around, including those folks that have given presentations or will give presentations. Part of the purpose of a conference like this is networking and sharing of ideas. I mean, what are your ideas? How do you want to use? Anybody want to, at this point, make some contributions, some ideas? We could get our secretary Margie there to write down on the. Oh, she's smiling. So if you have any thoughts or ideas, do it now or as we work through this list, and you will have seen a lot of these ideas already. Feel free to make contributions of how you want to use your taxonomy, how you want to use semantics in general. First, and this is, I think I have like a dozen slides or use cases. First, you really want to maintain it now that you've built it. Rachel could talk about how she maintains the thesaurus. It can be a very lightweight effort in terms of overhead, the amount of time per week. It could be just a few hours a week, or maybe only a few hours a month to maintain it. Or it could be a full-time effort. It depends on the scale of your operations, the breadth and depth of the coverage of the content you're dealing with, and how rapidly things are changing in the field. And there may be lots and lots of new discoveries, lots of great new science. That doesn't mean there's new terminology. It might be very well described by existing terminology. Where do the new terms come from? Where do you find them? Common sense. You poll or survey your subject matter experts periodically. You can make that a fairly low-level intrusion on their time. Make it a simple form and fill out. You get terms from authors. We've talked about author submission systems and the use of a taxonomy and a thesaurus and our MAI tool for indexing at the time a manuscript is submitted, and then in some operations we've described, it's indexed later in the process. And you can provide opportunity for the author to submit their own terms if they don't see them in the thesaurus at that point or along the line. You get it from users. So people coming asking you for content or information. If Dr. Kotula goes to the Sandia Tech Library and asks somebody, do you have any information on this? Well, that's a source of new terms. One of the best is search logs on your site, where your content is mounted on hosts or whatever, is to get the search logs and look for the terms that users are using. Because your thesaurus should map the preferred terms in your thesaurus or taxonomy to what users are using. Now maybe what the terms that users are using are not the preferred terms, but you want to map it. You also want to map your thesaurus to the content. It's got to, and so it's a bridge between the content and the users. And you may have diverse users. So you may have to map quite a variety of terms to the preferred term. But search logs are an excellent way. Of course, you want to keep reviewing your source material as new content comes in. And to the how elaborate is your taxonomy or thesaurus? If you go from a taxonomy of strictly hierarchical relationships, you can do that in Excel or on another spreadsheet. But if you start getting into related terms and more and multiple broader terms into a full thesaurus, then it's probably good to start looking for a tool. Of course, you're at Data Harmony's user group meeting, and we have such tools, but there are others out there. How often should you do this? Well, you need to go back through the how, these mining contributors, et cetera, raw source, and what's the volume of new terms or changes to terms. It's fairly low. You can, and you'll get a sense of it as to the flow and whether it should be updated weekly, daily, monthly, quarterly. Back when, at the start of online, when you were keying on slow with modems and very slow baud rate, you needed a printed thesaurus from the particular database you're going to search so that you could develop your search strategy in advance before you went online, because it was slow and expensive to get online. So you needed a print copy next to you, and you would develop a search strategy. Then you'd go online and search. So you needed that tool printed. But now you can serve that up electronically. And so it's much easier to update. So you could update it on a regular basis, as opposed to printing it, every few years. We did a project a few years ago where the thesaurus was five year or more years old. So, part of the project was to update it. But once you get a sense of the rhythm for your thesaurus and your content, then set a fixed schedule. And make sure you assign somebody with the responsibility to do it. That's probably the most important advice I can give you. Assign a person that's responsible for maintaining it, and then it will get maintained. Second use case is you want to use it to index your content. Why build it if you don't index your content? If you don't label your information objects with those terms. Now, there's a number of ways that you can do that. And I know that we have some customers that we've built taxonomies for, that they've had for a while, and they haven't actually indexed their content yet. But that's where the payoff is. Until you index your content, you're not going to get that payoff. And there are a number of, that's simple straight line workflow. And when I say index your content, you also sometimes called tag or tagging the content, or cataloging, or classifying, or categorizing. And each of those has a fairly unique definition in library speak, information science speak. But, we can generalize the meaning here, and what we're talking about is getting your taxonomy terms somehow associated with each content item. Here's a slightly different workflow, and this just, there's more than one way to do this. Another workflow is where it's indexed twice, one at submission, and then after it's been revised and accepted, sometimes, you say, okay, we want to publish this, but you got to make some changes. So then it's indexed a second time before it goes into the repository. So there's a number of workflows that you can get. You can do it manually. One thing to keep in mind, though, that there are different processes and different software tools that can aid you in this process. Of course, we have our Data Harmony Machine Automated Index, or MAI, to help automate the process, and that can be deployed either in a fully automated process or in an assisted process where there's a person involved, or some combination thereof. For some companies that we've dealt with, they've had a dual flow. They subscribe to general news, they get a license and it's fed in, and automated indexing is good enough. 100% automated indexing is good enough. So it just runs through the indexer, gets put in the repository, users can search, etc. For their internal research reports, high-value content, then they run it through an assisted mode, to where an editor reviews, or an indexer reviews the indexing suggested by MAI. So you can have different types of workflow, but you need to get the content indexed. Some systems, when they call it indexing, it's really equivalent to a classification or system in the old library thing. They are really putting it into file folders with topic names. They may be doing that in an automated fashion, but so as content comes in, it gets put in a file folder. Just like Windows, and you go to your directory, to find something, you'll find the content under Anthrax, and you'll find a folder with documents in it. And those systems are fine, but one of the things to understand about that is if you take that content out of that system, you're separating it from the intellectual value add of those semantic labels. Because the label is on the file folder, not on the document. It's not a permanent part of the document. So what we try to push people towards is putting the If you take just a simple article, not a full one there, unstructured, maybe done in Word, you hit the data harmony server, and what we've done is indexed it and added some structure to it, some XML. But what we're really trying to do, and then of course it ends up in your, it's as a structured document in your repository. It could be a MarkLogic repository. But we are adding the indexing, where's the cursor here? Yeah, right here. We're adding it as a permanent part of this digital object with XML markup around it. So wherever that document goes, you put it in a relational database repository, and later you get enlightened and want to go to a NoSQL database like MarkLogic and move it over to export it and put it into MarkLogic or another type of repository. This content, this labeling, the sweat and investment that you put into your thesaurus and into the indexing process goes permanently with this digital object. That's an object lesson for you folks that when you're looking at different systems, that you really want to go this route so that that document and its semantic fingerprint are independent of any system, including ours. That indexing tells us something about the document, the meaning or the content. It also tells us something about the author. That's where we start building a semantic fingerprint about authors, is that those subject terms tell you something about what I'm interested in, what I'm writing about. Maybe you might think I'm an expert in that area based on those subject terms, and it can help drive a lot of additional value down the road, as I'll show you. So, I mean, it's just an unstructured document. You get it structured, then you index it. So you can see here the subject terms that we've assigned by MAI. But in this system, there's an opportunity for the author to assign terms. So these are author-assigned terms. So you can mine these terms for possible new concepts to keep your thesaurus fresh. So we consider that these uncontrolled terms and these controlled terms as a kind of a generic label for this type of different types of indexing. Another thing you can do is integrate your content, your thesaurus, your workflow with different applications in your pipeline and different functionality. Margie's presentation yesterday had, I think, even more packages that we can integrate with to make the process as seamless and complete as possible. Thank you, ASCE. This is a wireframe they did a number of years ago. And so where can a thesaurus or taxonomy help in this process? Well, all of those places. Controlled vocabularies in some cases, browse by topic, which happens to be this little box here. And it's not so much I expect you to read all these little boxes, but to see that it can have a very dramatic impact on facilitating your users and empowering them for all kinds of things. And by the way, that's their websites from last week, so I wanted to show. They're not sitting still and keeping their website fresh versus this wireframe from, I think, about 2009 or something. So, this use case 5, a recommender. Kevin Ford showed a variation on this yesterday of what you can do when you have semantics and how you can use the power of semantics to guide people to help speed discovery. So you can look at the type ahead kind of thing and look at preferred and non-preferred terms. You can go ahead and do full text search on a non-preferred term or a term that's not even in the taxonomy. You want to allow users to do that, to use their own terminology. And then you want to mind that for possible terms, but this kind of helps them out. So they did a search. Now the third item down is one that the user says, oh, that's of interest to me. They click on it. And here's the thesaurus terms that this article is indexed with. And here's similar content, and it's based upon the semantic fingerprint of this particular article and finding articles that have very similar semantic fingerprint. This is different than other people looked at, or the last time you were here you looked at. And I know all of you have had this experience of buying a present on Amazon for someone that's totally different interests than you do. But you know what their interests are, so you buy it. So the next time you go to Amazon, they say, you're probably going to be interested in this now. Well, not until their birthday next year. I'm interested. So now you get this for another 6 months of, I'm not interested in, that area really. So this is based specifically on what they're interested in right now, because that's the article that they clicked on. So that's what intrigued them. So why not serve the best semantic profile that you can come up with? Another reason why this is good is that the search term that they used may not be in the thesaurus. So the original search set may or may not have a lot of useful information, but they may see something that's probably what I want. They may not have used the right search term, but it's there because their term was broad enough and it did a full text, so they click on it. So now you've got real tight semantic fit with possible help them out. Use case 6. Related terms, and help using that for navigation. So more semantic navigation. So someone's typed in cell, and so you see all the different preferred and non-preferred terms that you might want to select or continue typing your own term. And you also could use the hierarchical navigation. And as we heard yesterday, the use case or studies is that there are a fair number of folks that really don't know what the plus sign means. It's in terms of expanding your taxonomy for navigation. So, which is surprising, but you got to do these sorts of studies to figure it out. So what's a better way to display the taxonomic view of your thesaurus? But I mentioned the auto-completion. And then over there is broader and narrower terms, or related terms. You could do all three. Related terms, broader terms, narrower terms that can maybe suggest other things that they might be interested in. And PLOS does this. This is an older PLOS 1 screenshot. And the navigation, they're using kind of a breadcrumb navigation. I think So in this frame, right, part of the frame here, they're going from biology and life science to anatomy to lymphatic systems. So they're showing you kind of a breadcrumb. And then when you select something, they're also showing related, broader, narrower term subjects on the right panel there to help you. Okay, it can facilitate, use case 7, it can facilitate e-commerce. It's good for retail businesses, but it can also help drive business for the scholarly publishers here in the room. It can help guide people to other resources. They do a search, and maybe there's a manual that you publish in that area that you could surface that they might buy. So you can use term disambiguation to add a e-commerce site, a scholarly publisher site, or Amazon or wherever. Sofas, couches, we're all familiar with these sorts of things. Somebody might enter brain buckets and you say, well, we're really talking about motorcycle helmets. So you can help disambiguate that. Bikes, of course, all these variations. What do you mean by bikes? If you enter that term, looking for that. And so this is what the semantics and taxonomy development can help you do. And obviously this is going to grow over time if you monitor your search logs to see, well, there's a new, unicycles. There's a new term for, synonym for bikes. Related terms, again, if you're in there looking for bicycle helmets, surface bicycle seats, they might be also interested in, or vice versa. So, and that also works at scholarly publishing sites. If they're interested in this topic, they might be interested in this conference. Of course, if they're looking for motorcycles, you definitely want to surface health insurance, accident insurance, liability insurance. And back to use this slide again, is that you're driving people to membership committees. This is what that little box is all about. So based on their searching and the terms they use, knowledge and learning, you can drive them to a conference, other subject members, maybe special interest groups. This slide was originally developed by Helen Atkins at AACR, but if you look, you come in with a search, doing a search on an article, and based on the article you select and the subject terms, you can, look to a special activities, special interest groups, maybe suggest that they attend a conference on that topic. This drives revenue through cross-marketing. This is where you get your payoff. So you come in, author networks, and building author networks, it helps, as we've talked about already in various presentations, helping with the peer review process, which is another use case, but it also can help, job postings. Marry an author or a user that's searching on something to a job posting, maybe suggest grants that they might be interested in. So this helps retain membership. Okay, coming out of school and everything's on your smartphone, you can go to Google. Why do you need to join AIP or ASCE? If, like Dr. Kotula, if you look at the think hierarchically of a taxonomy, most of the stuff he does is really like down at the 8th level. He knows everybody's publishing at that level. So why does he need to join a particular society? Well, cross-fertilization. These other types of resources that you can provide him, giving him related terms that might suggest subjects in biology that might help what he's doing in material science. So, and another slide on use case 9 on author networks, which we've had other presentations already, so I won't on that. I won't linger here. But as the semantics grow and you keep an authority file of your authors and your members, usually the same. Most of your peer reviewers are also, at one time or another, authors. So you keep these databases, you keep their semantic profile. You can just do amazing things with this down the road. This helps pay for your investment. And then part of it is controlling affiliations. That's how you helps disambiguate authors, is to know, well, what institution are they from? And the U of W, Wisconsin, Washington, Wyoming, Warsaw. So you have to start working with that. It's not easy. The address may not tell you anything because people, you get a grant to study in oceanography, the University of Washington, Seattle, and in comes a paper with a Ketchikan address, or a Wisconsin address or something. Well, they're doing some studies in Lake Michigan, and they have a little office there. That's why their address is there. So, disambiguating is a tricky business with the affiliations and the author names. So, we build templates like this to help manage and move the process forward, to have a better understanding of who these people are, where they work, what they're involved with. And again, Bob gave you some slides on this, and there'll be other talks on it. So that helps. All the last few use cases helps build a semantic fingerprint about not only your members, your authors, your customers, but also companies and institutions. So you begin to understand your landscape from a meaning standpoint, meaning markers, if you will. This allows you to personalize in a non-invasive way. You don't have to keep cookies on them, but if you know what subject areas they're interested in, it can help drive them. You can serve them up other topics of interest, get them into communities of excellence or centers of excellence in practice, help facilitate their career. So, this author, their list of articles, it's filtered by topic. So all of that helps drive this process. And find an expert or peer review, we've talked about, and how semantics can help with and disambiguation efforts can help drive and make that process more efficient and more effective. Don't want to overload. You have some reviewers that are very good at accepting papers, and pretty soon, you realize they're overwhelmed. They stop replying to your requests. So, you want to find others, members and authors and reviewers. Matchups, people to people, people to resources, people or resources to resources. So matchups, which are very similar to mashups. Semantics adds precision to these processes. So that's another way to leverage your semantics in your taxonomy, is to do this type of matching up. Mapping terminology, differences. And of course we talked, I mentioned, couch and sofa, that's sort of disambiguation and finding a preferred term and a non-preferred term. But it's also mapping departments. The people in the law department at DuPont don't necessarily speak the same language as the people in the marketing department. In fact, I can tell you they do not. So how do you get resources, internal corporate resources, that might be useful in the marketing department that's in finance and vice versa, or in legal and so on and so forth? How do you get these resources available that they know they're there and might be valuable? Mapping to a common language and mapping out to their unique languages is, really, really helps. A professional like, Iron Pirate, Fool's Gold. I don't even know how to pronounce music pula, Venus flytrap. So, how do you? Someone comes in looking for, Venus flytrap they want to buy, and for their musical Little House of Horrors, I think it was, for their set, and what's the technical term? Well, you don't necessarily have to show the technical term if they're not interested, but having it mapped is very useful. Scientific to generic to trade, things like acetaminophen, trade name Tylenol, but it's known in Europe, UK, as Panadol. Well, that's a trade name. You get to the STM meeting in London in December, and you get a crushing headache, and you go in and ask for Tylenol. Well, probably they would know it's in London at a chemist there. They probably know it's Panadol, but you go out in the hinterlands, maybe not. acetylsalicylic acid and so on. Consumption, tuberculosis. And then old terms like light amplification by simulated emission of radiation. Well, it became laser, all caps, as an acronym, and now it's common to be lowercase. Unless it starts a sentence in capital L, but laser is now okay in general usage. So it's made that migration from a long term to an acronym to just a word. But you want to like map that. That's how you can get to science from the 1930s, or if it's been digitized to the 1860s. And you know, some of that stuff is classic and as good as more recent stuff. Different views. In Thesaurus Master, you can, in managing your taxonomy, you can get a hierarchical or alphabetic term. And those of you who work with Thesaurus Master know these views. I put this out here because you have some option in terms of displaying your taxonomy to non-taxonomists, to users of your content. As it was reported yesterday, not everybody knows how to click on the plus to expand a hierarchical view of a taxonomy. It's not that they don't know how, they don't think about it, they're not too busy, whatever. But so there are other views that you can provide them of, you know, what content you have. The bottom one is a visualization type deal, and of course deleted terms is most useful for those of you who are managing your taxonomy and so on. Concept and mining or term mining and visualization. Margie had some great slides, and so did Bob, on how to use the semantics along with other metadata to create visualizations that can then be analyzed and provide meaning and understanding to decision makers and scientists, analysts, etc. So you have these different types of views that can really help. And some of the views can be helpful to the users, others can be, as I think it was Margie or Bob was talking about, how you can use the visualization to look at topic distributions among your journals and find out, well, this journal hasn't really published on that topic in quite a few years. What's going on? Why is that the case? Linking and mashups. So semantics with geographic name authority files, with various kinds of descriptive information that you can keep in a geographic taxonomy, for example, so that you can overlay on maps different kinds of information. And